Anxiety and panic. In this module, we will examine what anxiety, phobias and panic are, what effect they could have on a diver, and how to deal with them. Anxiety disorders. Problems of anxiety range from a state of anxious tension and panic attacks to phobias. People with serious anxiety disorders should not dive because they could easily lose the capacity of self-control. Great care also needs to be taken by those who take psychotropic drugs because their effects are not known on diving-related injuries. As a general rule, if driving vehicles is a contraindication to the medication being taken, it should also be considered as such for diving. Anxiety and phobias. Anxiety is a feeling of apprehension and fear that is excessive in respect to the actual situation. The cause of the anxiety may be a real or a potential danger, or more simply, the way the situation is perceived. Anxiety shows itself in numerous ways, such as breathlessness, palpitations, tachycardia, a feeling of suffocation, dizziness, hot spells, shivering, excessive perspiration, shaking, nausea, feeling weak at the knees, diarrhea, muscular tension, lack of salivation, and others. While diving, a low average level of anxiety can be an advantage because it will make you more cautious and take more care. However, when anxiety becomes excessive, you can become paralyzed when faced with danger. Your ability to reason and your reactions become limited, and your mind becomes fixed on the terrorizing aspect, or an aspect presumed as such, causing you to neglect basic behavior and to take the necessary precautions. For divers, claustrophobia, fear of enclosed spaces, is the most dangerous phobia because it can also be brought on by the tunnel vision effect caused by the mask. Claustrophobia also represents a serious problem if treatment in a hyperbaric chamber is needed. Agoraphobia, fear of open spaces, could occur while making free ascents in the blue. Nygophobia, fear of not being able to breathe, could be caused by the loss of the mask. Nyctophobia, fear of the dark, could occur on night dives or in caves. Barophobia, fear of being crushed, could be felt as the mass of water above the diver increases. Finally, there are also cases of people who have an irrational fear of the sea. Thalassophobia, of fish, itophobia, and more specifically, of sharks, elasmophobia. Panic. What happens if a feeling of anxiety continues to grow? At a certain point, the person will lose all rationality and begin to panic. Panic can be described as an unreasonable and intense fear that can be provoked by a real stimulus, or may occur spontaneously without something triggering it off. The consequence of this unreasonable, hysterical fear is the total loss of self-control. Panic may take an active form, meaning that there is an immediate reaction, or a passive form, in which reactions to a given situation are blocked. A panic attack begins suddenly, reaches its maximum peak within about 10 minutes and disappears within 60 minutes. Panic attacks may be unexpected, unprovoked, or directly associated with a stimulus, such as a piece of malfunctioning equipment, disorientation on a wreck or in a cave, very low visibility, and so on. During a panic attack, a mental blackout occurs. The victims act in a totally unforeseeable way and may even cause injury. A diver in active panic has only one thing in mind: to get to the surface as quickly as possible. Recognizing and dealing with panic. You must learn to recognize the first signs of stress to prevent it leading to panic. A change in the breathing rate is the first sign of all types of stress, and it is easy to recognize. Breathing fast means that gas exchange is inefficient, and this leads to a feeling of breathlessness. Feeling starved of air is a warning signal. You can check your body's breathing by looking at the way the exhaust bubbles rise to the surface. If your body is breathing correctly, there will be groups of bubbles at some distance from each other. The movements of an anxious diver are jerky, irregular, and aimless. If the level of tension rises, the victim tends to keep looking upwards to check the direction to the surface and the support boat, which represents safety. Obsessively checking the reading of your pressure gauge and computer are also premonitory signs. You can find a table summarizing the signs and symptoms characteristic of anxiety and panic in the manual. Certain factors can cause panic more easily than others, such as a large leak, malfunctioning equipment, disorientation, or seeing large predators. Preventing these situations is much easier than having to deal with them. Always make sure that your equipment is in order, working perfectly and suitable for the dive you have planned. Always dive within your physical abilities and real diving competence. Always remember that any problem can and must be solved under the water, and not by making an uncontrolled ascent. Dealing with a diver in active or passive panic. A diver in panic is unable to carry out instructions they are given and get control of themselves, and this is why their chances of survival depend on their dive buddy intervening in time. If panic occurs in a passive form, the diver will become paralyzed with fear. However, before intervening, check that they are not simply observing something of particular interest. However, if the situation seems safe, approach the diver and see if they respond to your OK signal. If you get no response, you will have to accompany the diver to the surface. You must take great care during the ascent, because at any moment, passive panic could suddenly turn into active panic without warning. To bring them to the surface, position yourself behind the diver and take hold of the cylinder valve with your right hand, so you can use your left hand to control both buoyancy compensators. It is important not to approach a diver in panic from the front, because if they begin to struggle, they could strike out at you. If the diver, overcome by panic, tries to ascend by finning towards the surface, it is almost impossible that you will be able to stop them. The only thing you can do is grab them and try to slow down their ascent. A diver in panic might not be breathing, maybe because they have spat out the regulator or have run out of air, and you have to try to ensure that they don't ascend while holding their breath by offering them your auxiliary second stage. You might have to force them to breathe by putting the mouthpiece in their mouth and pressing the purge button. A diver who, on the surface, struggles violently, tears off their mask, spits out the regulator and can't stay buoyant is in active panic. Also, a diver in active panic on the surface must never be approached from the front. You must therefore stay out of their range and approach them from behind by swimming on the surface or under the water. On the surface, keep at a safe distance while giving short but clear orders like inflate your jacket. If there is no response, get behind them and use a knee block by taking hold of the cylinder valve and holding on tightly to the cylinder with your knees. In this position, their attempts to grab hold of you will be unsuccessful. If you can't manage to calm them down, try inflating their buoyancy compensator and, as soon as you have done so, move away. If you choose to approach the diver from under the water, dive under and grab hold of their knees or hips to jettison the weight belt and then surface behind them. Use the knee block to try to inflate their buoyancy compensator. Despite these precautions, you could still find yourself imprisoned in the diver's grip. A good way to escape the vices of a diver in panic is to push them violently upwards while you descend under the water. As it is the water that is the source of their panic, the diver will not want to go below the surface and so will loosen their grip. We will repeat the order of priorities for dealing with a diver in passive panic. Assess if conditions are safe enough. Take action so as to never put yourself in danger. Assess if the casualty is in panic. Bring the casualty to surface. Prevent water getting into the casualty's airways. Help the casualty to become buoyant. We will repeat the order of priorities for dealing with a diver in active panic. Assess if conditions are safe enough. Take action so as to never put yourself in danger. Bring the casualty to the surface. Slow down the ascent rate and get them to breathe. Prevent water getting into the casualty's airways. Help the casualty to become buoyant. Encourage the casualty to take action while staying at a safe distance. Conserve enough energy to tow the casualty. In the next module, we will take a look at the dangerous effects of some gases on divers. We will also examine how to intervene without getting into the water and what actions to take if the casualty is in respiratory arrest. See you soon.